Last team now. We're moving out of our idea here of great lineups. We wanted to talk about those 6 teams at the top. Mark hit me yesterday and said he wanted to talk about the Houston Rockets. And this is the team I've probably enjoyed. It sucks. Like, I've watched a good amount of Rockets games now because I'm just curious on some level, but I think I've enjoyed watching them the least because they don't really have a way to beat anybody right now. I'll let you talk before I go into my thing, because I know that this was the team you wanted to talk about more than anything, and I don't want to steal that from you. So please give me your thoughts on the Houston Rockets, who are currently looking at their record 1-8.
Yeah. And it's an earned 1-8 too. I think part of this is me being lazy and not wanting to write it yet, because I'm going to write something about the Rockets. I think what's so frustrating is, like, I really am so intrigued and excited about most of the players on this roster. But the problem is, one of the things that I wanted to hit on first, like, I feel like there's been a lot of frustration amongst fans and just people in general about Jabari Smith Jr. And I think it's misplaced.
So I've missed that. And I saw it a little bit today. Can you explain that to me a little bit?
A lot
just
of
by like me not being on Twitter a lot.
For the best.
Can you
explain
explain
that?
Not a
to be on Twitter. Well, yeah. To be fair, like, he's shooting 30% from the field right now, but also, like, so there's just been a lot of, like, well, this guy was mocked as, like, the number 1 prospect, this, that, like, how is he not being this guy who's taking us to the next stage? And I think that to say that it's a misunderstanding of Jabari is maybe a little bit harsh. I don't mean it to be unfair to fans, but, like, this was not a guy who was coming in to be ball dominant and take your franchise to the quote unquote next step just in year 1. Like, I think that he brought a lot of things that you could see his plug and play, like being a movement shooter and being, like, a very, very good movement shooter, being somebody who you could get some reps as a pull-up shooter, trying to find some ways to experiment with him, getting more on-ball reps, and being a good plug and play defender. Like, I thought he was the best perimeter defender in the draft, at least in the top end of the lottery, especially with what he brings, lengthwise, size. But the utilization has just been a problem for me. Like, he is being, I think, part of the biggest struggle from, yes, he's missing shots from the field, but it's the way that he's being used that has been most problematic for me. And that's before we even dive into the rest of the roster. Like, he's mostly just being tasked with spotting up.
I was going to say, you mentioned him being a terrific movement shooter.
They just haven't used it.
Do you know how many shots he's taken off of screens so far per synergy?
It's got to be less than 10.
3. Yep. Or no, I'm sorry. He's taken 2 and then turned it over once on a attempt off of a screen.
Yeah.
So 3 possessions off of screens.
Yeah. And that almost sounds like too many. It's just, so that has been really frustrating for me to watch, just from, like, obviously I'm not, like, a fan of the team, but just in terms of, like, being a fan of Jabari and wanting to see players succeed. I don't think he's been put in a position to succeed right now. Like, again, like, yes, you have to make your shots and you have to shoot better than 30% from the field, but he's not getting his shots in ways that I think you were really hoping to see from him this year and see him get coached to. Having him be put within an offense. And I think that extends out past just Jabari. To be fair, and I mean this, like, completely seriously, like, this team has really missed Bruno Fernando since the first 2 games. Like, having a center who is a lob threat, who is a good screener, who can roll, like, I think you've seen a pretty drastic dip in Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green's decision-making since losing him. And that has woefully hurt the offense because neither of them are true point guards. They can bring some skills as pick and roll guys who can create plays.
Well, that's really all Kevin is good at, is a pick and roll player, as a passer, at least. He can
the scoring out of pick and roll has been,
but like, the thing he's good at as a pick and roll passer is hitting the roll man. If you have Şengün on the court, Şengün's, like, trying to pop into, like, the mid post area more often than not, kind of short rolling. It's just not really what Kevin does. And he's not, like, a great cross corner guy. He's not really a great, like, kick out passer often. It's been frustrating for sure watching.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, you look at that and it's like, okay, again, like, Jalen needs to shoot better. He's only at 38% of the year. But again, I think part of why guys are struggling is because this offense is a mess, man. Like, this offense has no direction. Again, part of that is this.
Let me talk about that,
Yeah.
because I think that this is the part that's worth noting.
Yeah.
I don't really think they have any way to beat pick and roll coverages right now.
Yeah.
They don't really have any effective method to attack. And that's a problem. So if you have like a Kevin Porter Jr., Şengün combo, both of those guys, like, teams want them to pull up, right? They're comfortable with a pull-up shot, or they're comfortable with a Şengün pick and pop, right? Neither of them are good enough shooters. Those are plus EV shots for defenses. Şengün's not a good enough roller toward the rim to be like impactful to where you really have to keep honest on him. That allows you to just kind of be able to put more pressure on Porter and let kind of close off passing lanes, frustrate him a little bit, make it harder for him to see things. If you try and put Jabari at the 5, which I think is what would be a really interesting way to get him open shots potentially. Mm-hmm. The problem is that they don't really have lineup constructions right now that they can put out there that will effectively be able to utilize that, because most of their lineup constructions with Jabari at the 5, if it's not Jason Tate or KJ Martin, but where you play Jabari as the big, one of KJ Martin or Jason Tate is out there. And both of those guys are players that you can hide the center on at the end of the day. And you can let the center just sag off of them and fall back into the paint and just be an extra big man there. And then when you run the Jabari Jalen or Jabari Kevin Porter situation in ball screens, they can just switch that action. It's too easy to switch that action, right? Yep. Jalen's great in terms of first step, but like, he's still developing his pick and roll craft. So they don't really have a way to beat ball screen coverages right now. It's way too easy to just clog the paint every single time that KJ Martin, Jason Tate are out there every time. And like, I know that Rockets fans are excited about Şengün just in terms of productivity, but like, I haven't seen a lot from Şengün that says to me that, like, I think he works hard. And like, I also think he gets frustrated that he doesn't get the ball a good amount of the time. Like, he calls for post touches, which only goes to like clog up the pass or the driving lanes for Jalen Green and Kevin Porter more than what you would like to see for those guys whose game is built off of driving. It's just not a roster right now. And this is something that I've talked about ad nauseum. It feels like it's not a roster that makes sense, in my opinion. Yeah. There are a lot of really good players that I really like. I really like Jabari Smith. I really like Jalen Green's upside. I really like the idea of Şengün as like a short roll playmaking big that he utilizes sometimes. I like the theory of Tari Eason. By the way, Tari Eason, another guy that teams can just kind of put a center on right now and let him shoot from distance. Teams are going to be happy with that. I like Usman Garuba to an extent. I like all of these guys on this roster. It's just too hard to make a scheme that works, I guess is the way to put it for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. And I think,
and look, like, I'm sorry, before, like, I know Steven Silas gets a lot of shit. He's not helping. Yeah. Like, let's say that. Like, I wouldn't really have a problem with the Rockets moving on from Steven Silas. I just don't know that it's going to get better if you bring in a different coach either. Yeah. Like, if they want to move on from Silas, like, I'm with that. Like, he's not making things better here.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. I got into this sounds like bad connotation, but more like, I talked about this with some Rockets fans the other day, because they brought that same point up with me, and they were like, well, what does he had to work with? And I'm like, I totally agree, but I think my issue is just more so, okay, you have to find something defensively. Like, it's not even like they are so listless and bad on defense right now. The communication is awful. Like, the saying, it sounds rich to say the vibes are terrible, but like, even just watching games back, like the amount of finger pointing, the amount of frustration with guys not getting the ball because they're open, just the amount of like, oh, well, you missed the rotation. There's so much bickering back and forth like that. It seems like a small thing, but I do think at some point, like, this does come back on coaching. Like, a lot of it is the roster and the players. It goes hand in hand. It's not just a one thing or the other. And that's part of like why I struggle at times with team builds like the Rockets. Like when your goal is let's get a lot of talent. On one hand, I get it, but at the other point, okay, how does this fit? What is the actual like? I think you can picture what it is eventually, but this is a team to me like that very much needs vets and complementary vets. Like I like Eric Gordon, but I think he's one of the worst complementary vets you could have on this team. Like he's very much so an outlet scorer. Like I don't think that he's a great pick and roll passer or secondary playmaker. Like you need guys who, okay, like one of the things I liked that the Spurs went out and got, like getting somebody like Doug McDermott, like just having somebody who is a capable off movement shooter who can pass the ball, who is going to not demand touches. Like when you have guys who need to grow on the ball, you need guys who are able to help them develop that. That's part of the reason I've talked about with the Spurs. Like I don't think that the Spurs should just lightly give up Jakob Poeltl because he's been huge in aiding the development of their on-ball guys the last couple of years. Like we've seen that with Keldon Johnson this year in his league. Part of the reason he's gotten to be a better pick and roll passer, and by better, I mean going from never passing in pick and roll to like actually making passes and reads this year, is because he plays with arguably the best screener in the NBA. The Rockets just don't have guys like that to set them up right now. And I think on one hand, again, like that is a really tough situation to put a coach into, just given what the roster has been, but also just the results. Like I feel like he's pretty cleanly tuned out by the team, it feels like, in some ways.
Well, like, so I'm trying to find like the right like team for Eric Gordon. I don't know who it is. That like and by the right team for Eric Gordon, I think there are a lot of teams Eric Gordon could help. Eric Gordon could go help New Orleans. He could help the Cavs. He could help Phoenix. He could help the Lakers. He could help, X, Y, and Z, right? Like there are a lot of teams out there that really make sense. But like, who is he actually like? What can the Rockets get back that makes sense for them as a vet? Like, does Devontae Graham help them? Like if you do a New Orleans deal?
Nah, because he's like, because I feel like they very much so need more of like a obviously you're not getting Darius Garland, but like that kind of guy. Like I feel like they need somebody who's more of like I can get into the paint and be creative and get guys open with my ability to manipulate guys. Devontae Graham's like his playmaking is pretty strictly out of his pull-up shooting, I feel like. And that's very similar to KPJ. And I feel like they need more of a change-up guard. Which is part of why I really wish they'd just been able to play John Wall last year and figure that out. Obviously not that cut and dry, but yeah.
I'm just like trying to find like unselfish
Wright.
guys.
Can we get DeLon Wright to the Houston Rockets?
No, because he's better than he's
right
helpful for the Wizards, and he's hurt. But like, it's hard to find the guy, I guess. Like is what I'm kind of getting at. Like it's hard for me to find the player where it's like, okay, if we're moving out a vet, let's bring back a vet and maybe get like a draft pick back. Like does Patrick Beverley? Oh God, you couldn't put. I don't think Patrick Beverley like would want to be there.
Yeah.
Like I think that he would probably ask for a release. So and like and that just that comes from him wanting to play for a contender. It feels like a lot of guys want to play for contenders now. A lot of guys don't want to go through the issues of rebuilding. And it's like just thinking across the league, like it's hard for me to find the guy that, if you're Toronto, like, would you do something like a Thad Young?
I was about to bring that up. And my thing would be, I wonder if Thad really wants to, because he was the guy who was brought in to help young teams for a large stretch of his career. And like, I don't know. It's a good question.
I want him to win. I want him to get a chance to win.
100%.
So I don't know. It's hard. It's a hard situation in Houston. I don't love, as I've said throughout the year, I don't love the roster fit. I love most of the players on the team. I really want them to succeed. I don't know what to do with them.